They knew it would fail. They had proof. They had history. They had graves. They had warnings written in blood. And they did it again. Civilizations don't collapse because they don't know better. They collapse because they refuse to learn. If you value uncomfortable truths, if you believe survival depends on brutal honesty, then subscribe now, because this episode is about the most dangerous human instinct of all. Pride that rejects learning. Let's begin. Warning 10. Rome repeating its own military mistakes. The Roman Republic became an empire because it adapted. The Roman Empire began dying when it stopped. Early Rome survived disasters like the Battle of Cannae, 216 BCE, against Hannibal by adjusting tactics, reforming recruitment, and avoiding direct confrontation. Rome learned. But centuries later, the empire stopped adapting. During the 4th and 5th centuries, Rome repeatedly underestimated so-called barbarian forces. The Gothic disaster at Adrianople, 378 CE, was not a surprise. Rome had already faced mobile cavalry armies. It knew its heavy infantry formations struggled against highly maneuverable forces. Yet reforms were slow. Commanders clung to prestige tactics. Political pride blocked structural change. Then came 410 CE. Alaric and the Visigoths sacked Rome. The empire had warnings. It had precedent. It had earlier defeats that exposed weaknesses. But pride whispered, Rome is eternal. The result? Systemic collapse. Today, militaries worldwide face similar threats: cyber warfare, AI conflict, decentralized tactics. Yet institutions often resist reform because of tradition. How many modern empires believe they are too big to fail? Rome's mistake wasn't losing a battle. It was believing it didn't need to evolve anymore. When survival required humility, pride answered instead. Warning 09. France repeating invasion strategy errors. France learned in 1870 that static defense without adaptive strategy leads to disaster. It learned in World War I that trench warfare created stalemate and massive casualties. So what did it do in the interwar period? It built the Maginot Line. An engineering marvel. A psychological comfort blanket. A monument to yesterday's war. When Germany invaded in 1940, they simply went around it through the Ardennes. Blitzkrieg bypassed static defense. France had historical memory. It had studied German doctrine. It had intelligence. But leadership trusted fortifications over flexibility. The Maginot Line was not stupid. It was pride disguised as preparedness. Today we see the same pattern. Nations investing billions into old-style deterrence while threats evolve asymmetrically. Cyber attacks bypass walls. Economic warfare bypasses borders. Information warfare bypasses armies. The question isn't whether we build defenses. It's whether we're building defenses for the last war. France's failure was not ignorance. It was attachment to past solutions. Warning 08. Recurrent famine policies ignored. From 19th century colonial famines to 20th century state-managed food disasters, governments repeatedly ignored early warning signs. During the Irish potato famine, 1845 to 1852, food exports continued despite starvation. Ideology overrode adaptation. Nearly a century later, Similar ideological rigidity appeared during Mao's Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962. Agricultural mismanagement and denial of failure led to catastrophic famine. Different countries, different systems, same pattern. Officials refused to admit policy failure. Reporting was falsified. Pride blocked correction. Modern parallels. Climate-driven food instability. Supply chain fragility. Water shortages ignored until crisis. Every famine had warning signals. Crop data. Local testimony. Rising prices. But pride doesn't like to admit error. Survival required policy correction. Leadership chose image preservation instead. How many current systems are suppressing early signs of failure right now? B. Warning: 07 financial crisis cycles. The 1929 crash. The 1987 crash. The 1997 Asian crisis. The 2008 global financial meltdown. Different decades. Same psychology. Overconfidence. Leverage. Speculative bubbles. Too sophisticated to fail. Before 2008, many believed modern financial instruments had eliminated systemic risk. Housing prices would not collapse nationwide. Warnings existed. Analysts flagged overvaluation. Economists predicted instability. But pride in complex models silenced caution. And then collapse. What's haunting isn't that crashes happen. It's that they repeat almost rhythmically. Each generation believes, we're smarter than the last one. Are we? Cryptocurrency bubbles. AI valuation surges. Massive sovereign debt accumulation. Have we learned? Or are we just renaming risk? Warning: 06 urban planning failures repeated. Cities repeatedly build for growth versus not resilience. Floodplains become housing developments. Seismic zones become skyscraper clusters. Drainage systems remain outdated. After Hurricane Katrina, 2005, the world saw what happens when infrastructure warnings go ignored. After major earthquakes, engineers publish reports. After wildfires, safety reforms are proposed. But as years pass, urgency fades. Budget priorities shift. Memory softens. Risk returns. Urban design repeatedly favors short-term economics over long-term survival. We rebuild in the same vulnerable places. We repeat zoning mistakes. We approve unsafe density. Why? Because admitting structural flaws requires political humility. Cities rarely collapse in one day. They decay through repeated negligence. Warning: 05 military occupation lessons ignored. History shows that prolonged foreign occupations create resistance movements. From Napoleon in Spain to the Soviet Union in Afghanistan to the United States in Iraq, occupation breeds insurgency. This pattern is not obscure. It's textbook. And yet, time after time, powers enter believing. This time will be different. Initial victories create overconfidence. Cultural complexities get underestimated. Local grievances intensify. Insurgency adapts faster than occupation strategy. Survival required studying prior occupations deeply, not selectively. But pride convinces leaders their ideology or technology guarantees success. War doesn't just test weapons. It tests humility. And when humility is absent, repetition follows. Warning: 04 pandemic preparedness neglect. After SARS, 2003, experts warned of future coronavirus outbreaks. After H1N1, Ebola, MERS, global health institutions repeatedly said, "It's not if, it's when." Stockpiles were reduced. Budgets were cut. Preparedness plans gathered dust. Then came COVID-19. Supply shortages. Hospital overload. Confusion. The threat wasn't unpredictable. It was politically inconvenient. Public health warnings often lack urgency until catastrophe forces attention. Have we truly reformed global preparedness now? Or will funding fade again once memory fades? Pandemics expose one brutal truth. Nature doesn't care about our pride. Warning: 03 corporate failed mergers repeated. Corporate history is filled with failed mega mergers. AOL. Time Warner, 2000. Daimler. Chrysler, 1998. Countless others. Studies repeatedly show that many mergers destroy shareholder value. Yet executives continue high-risk consolidation. Why? Ego. Expansion, prestige. Market dominance dreams. Advisors warn about cultural mismatch. Analysts warn about overvaluation. But confidence in leadership vision overrides caution. Modern tech acquisitions often follow similar patterns, acquiring growth without integrating culture. The pattern is clear. Learning requires slowing down, but ambition often refuses to pause. Warning: 02 political reform reversals. Many nations implement reform during crisis: anti-corruption drives, constitutional updates, civil protections. But once stability returns, reforms weaken, safeguards erode, power reconcentrates. History shows a repeating cycle. Crisis: right-pointing arrow; reform, right-pointing arrow; stability, right-pointing arrow; complacency, right-pointing arrow; regression, right-pointing arrow; crisis again. The Roman Republic experienced this cycle before becoming autocratic. Post-colonial states faced it repeatedly. Even modern democracies see erosion of institutions over time. Survival requires protecting reform beyond crisis memory. But pride says, "We've solved it." Institutions decay quietly. Freedom erodes gradually. And when crisis returns, societies wonder, how did we end up here again? Warning: 01 humanity repeating ecological errors. Perhaps the most dangerous repetition of all. Deforestation in ancient Mesopotamia. Soil depletion in the Roman Empire. Collapse of Easter Island society. Environmental degradation is not new. Yet modern industrial civilization repeats large-scale extraction with global consequences. Climate change warnings have existed for decades. Scientific consensus has grown stronger. Extreme weather intensifies. Still, emissions rise. Why? Economic inertia. Political pride. Short-term incentives. Survival requires long-term thinking, but humanity struggles to prioritize future generations over present convenience. If history teaches anything, it's this: ecosystems don't negotiate. Collapse can be gradual then sudden. The ultimate anti-learning mistake is believing we are exempt from ecological law. Are we? Or are we writing the same ending on a planetary scale? Every warning in this episode shares one theme. Failure is not fatal. Refusing to learn is. Civilizations fall not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack humility. If this episode challenged you, disturbed you, or made you rethink the systems around you, then share it. Because survival depends on collective awareness. And ask yourself, what mistake are we repeating right now that future generations will study in disbelief? Subscribe to Top 10 Untold. Because history doesn't whisper, it repeats.